We have a variety of news to talk about today. We have some NHL signings to discuss. We have some updates on the NHL's return to play. And we have some trade rumor talk around the Los Angeles Kings. Their rebuild looks like it's over, and they could be going after Max Pacioretty. We'll discuss all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with some signings. We have a pair of signings each for the Canucks and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, the Canucks signings are both players already in their organization. Players have already played at their American Hockey League levels, had a touch of NHL games. Could very well be part of their taxi squad this year, where we're expected to have expanded NHL rosters here. But the Vancouver Canucks have signed defenseman Jalen Chatfield to a one-year, two-way contract. And 27-year-old center iceman Tyler Grevek, who's also, like I said, somebody who's played in the minor leagues a fair bit here. They both have a fair bit of pro hockey experience at that level with a limited NHL spots. But like I said, with expanded rosters, I wonder if they'll be part of the Canucks taxi squad here or not. And the Lightning have signed a pair of players from the 2020 NHL draft to entry-level contracts. Both center icemen, they're both from the WHL, and they were both second-round picks in this year's draft. So we have Gage Goncalves and Jack Finley, both under contract here now for Tampa. Both look like they're some pretty interesting prospects, but some pretty good offensive numbers in the WHL. Hard to say what this year is going to look like. We're still waiting to hear when those leagues in the junior leagues can get up and going. I know there's hope between January and February they'll be playing, but obviously, right now with the second wave of COVID happening in many parts of North America and the rest of the world, it's hard to predict exactly. But I know these prospects are probably anxious to play, but we'll see what their year holds this coming year in the near future. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some news on the NHL return to play. From the past weekend here, we had some updates from Elliot Friedman talking about the division alignments. Obviously, there's been some teams that are apparently not happy with how things are going. We know for sure there's going to be an all-Canadian division, which is what we talked about yesterday. Made some predictions on how that's going to go. But the other three divisions, obviously, we know will all be American teams. There's going to be 24 teams in total with three divisions of 8 teams. That much we know for certain. It sounds like the Eastern Division is pretty much intact, being teams like Boston and Buffalo that used to be in the Atlantic. And, of course, most of the other teams are from the old Metro Division, like Pittsburgh, Philly, Washington. And, of course, all the teams in the New York, New Jersey area, the Islanders, Devils, and the Rangers. So that division seems to be pretty much intact, because I haven't heard anything in a while now about teams moving from that. But it's between the division that will be somewhat central and the other one that will be further west, where the changes seem to be happening. Now, the latest update from Friedman indicates that it looks as though they kind of want to have two teams close together, both play in the Western Conference. That'll obviously to kind of limit travel would be the primary reason. So it looks as though it's likely going to be St. Louis and Minnesota going west, with Dallas coming more central. So just based on geographic location, that would make some good sense, and it would also make for some good rivalries. I know that it seems like they're very interested in getting St. Louis and Vegas in the same division here as well. And obviously in California, there's a question too if those California teams and the Sharks, Kings, and Ducks, if they're going to be able to play in their home rinks. Because I know with the rules and where everything is at, restrictions in California, there is some questions around that. They may have to use alternate buildings to play their NHL games. I know they're not the only ones in that predicament as well, and it's certainly part of what's getting hammered out here in the return to play. So that's the latest on that. We're still in a situation where they're saying there's still lots of things that are agreed upon, but still work to be done. Hoping to have things in a situation where they can vote here in the next couple of days. Even though they moved past their financial hurdles that were being discussed here in the last couple of weeks, those issues could come up again. And if it doesn't come up during the season, I could see it maybe happening next offseason. But it looks as though today's NHL veteran players that are signed longer term are basically going to be passing the debt down to future players and guys that are young on entry-level deals type of contracts now. Because it's going to end up in a situation with the 50-50 split that the players are going to end up owing the owners a big amount of money over the long haul. It's just going to be a matter of how that money gets paid back. And that's kind of the part that the owners seem unhappy with here, is how that money does get paid back. So we'll see. We could end up with future labor disputes over this, because it's going to have to be something that needs to be dealt with at some point in time. Just a matter of how far down the road they kind of kick that can. But it's something that could become messy situation later on. Now, as I mentioned as well, we want to take a look at some trade talk around the LA Kings and Max Pacioretty. Now, a couple of things that I found interesting here on the Kings. There's been some recent talk and based on some interviews from guys like Rob Blake as well as the head coach Todd McLellan, basically saying that their rebuild is over and that they're only moving forward from here. The veteran guys they have on the team are expected to be there for the long haul. They have lots of prospects, and basically right now they only see themselves adding and moving forward with what they have. So basically they see themselves turning the corner and working their way to the next phase out of the rebuild and only moving up. So I don't expect, based on these comments, that we'll really see much in the way of some veteran guys maybe being dumped, like you often see in rebuilds, where you see a key veteran guy get traded for a bunch of future prospects and draft picks, that type of thing. The guys that are there likely going to be there for the long haul. I would say the only possibility that could end up getting out of that maybe would be Jonathan Quick, but I would fully suspect that Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty, Dustin Brown, Jeff Carter, I don't see those guys really going anywheres. I see them kind of riding things out there. I would not be shocked, though, if Quick maybe gets moved somewhere down the line because they want to give younger goalies, more opportunity. That would make more sense, but they have a ton of prospects. The Kings are, arguably the deepest team in the prospect pool area in the entire NHL. So it makes sense that they really don't need to be having a lot of high picks here moving forward because they're so blessed with so many great prospects. They could go down the line here. Even doing a top 10 would be challenging because they have so many good players. So that's certainly a positive sign for the players that are there now. Like McClellan was saying, that obviously that's a sign of faith to the guys that are playing on the team already, that they're taking the next step and they're moving forward. Now, there's other articles out there, especially from Boston Hockey Now, as we reported, there's been multiple teams inquiring on the services of Max Pacioretty, who apparently is available from the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, before we jump into that article, I do know and did see the comments from Vegas Golden Knights owner Bill Foley saying they were not shopping patches, but he did acknowledge that they had cap issues and they would probably be addressing things in a different way. I'm not really certain on that. To me, this is a player who was rumored to be traded at the draft. Apparently, a deal was really close, didn't quite happen. I personally think that he is being shopped to some extent now, and the reason for that is it makes sense that they have to move out a significant salary. It's not that they don't like Pacioretty, but obviously they kind of get themselves in a jam where they wanted to move Fleury, then they backed out of that, and they kind of backed themselves in a corner to keeping Fleury and Leonard. So that's not really a possibility anymore, and that's a tougher contract to trade as well. Pacioretty still has a lot of good trade value after having a good year last year, and I can see there being a fair bit of interest. So it totally makes sense that he would be the player that possibly gets moved. Now, there's also been a lot of talk about Marchessault being out there, which we talked about as well a couple days ago in some talks that were had with the Predators on that front. But when it comes to Pacioretty, it would make sense that the Kings would circle back here and talk to the Golden Knights about his services. If they're coming out of this rebuild like they're saying and they want to take the next steps and move things forward, adding a guy like him who can be an added scorer in that top six immediately would be a great addition. They also have a lot of great prospects, so they could part with some future players there in order to make a trade like this happen. So they have the assets, there's no doubt. Between the Kings and the Penguins, the Kings acquiring him would make way more sense in my opinion. They have the cap space, they have the assets, and they're coming out of their rebuild, so they'll have a guy under contract for a few more years who can be a top scorer for them. To me, it makes a ton of sense. But obviously, a team like Pittsburgh, like we talked about before, and those rumors, as much as they could maybe see it being an upgrade, I just don't see how they could pull it off. And I was a little bit surprised to hear. Now, I'm not surprised in a way, because as we know, Rutherford's always being aggressive and looking for ways to make the team better. So from that aspect, we shouldn't be surprised. But it would be really complicated, and I just don't really see how they could do that. But in terms of Los Angeles, it's a completely different story. Now, of course, the Kings and Golden Knights are in the same division. That could get complicated. They may want a little bit more of an asking price, and that may or may not be, reason enough for the Kings maybe to not pull the trigger. But another thing that a lot of you may not even know, before Pacioretty was traded to Vegas, they had a deal with Montreal lined up to go to the Kings. It was done at the NHL draft. There was a lot of speculation that Pacioretty was on the move to the Los Angeles Kings, but apparently it never happened. It fell through at the last minute, but the Kings thought they had a deal. So he's definitely a player they've had their eye on for some time. And it makes sense that they would revisit that now and try to take advantage of Vegas' salary cap situation. So, it's not a given that he ends up being the guy that Vegas moves, but he's a guy with a lot of value. And Vegas really could end up getting some pretty good prospects out of the Los Angeles Kings to move this guy. So it would make a lot of sense that they should at least have, some conversations. And if they had conversations before, that they would circle back and have more here yet again. Because the Golden Knights need to do something, and a team like LA is a prime team who would be able to take that salary on and take advantage of it without giving up too much to make it happen. Now, the article even went on to say that they felt that Vegas would have to include a high draft pick as a sweetener. And if they were to do that, I mean, I can see the Kings going for that for sure. So I'm not sure that they would want to do that, and that's probably why we haven't seen a deal yet, regardless if it's Pacioretty, Mark Chasseau, or anybody else. They're probably trying to keep the first-round picks if they can help it. But as we saw, like with the Leafs and the Marleau contract getting dumped to Carolina, they had to give up something significant. And the teams that are in this boat, like not only Vegas but Tampa and other teams out there, like they're going to have to do something, and it's going to have to be worth their team's while to make it happen. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Kings rebuild being over. Does Pacioretty make sense to you as a big addition to help take them to that next step? And let me know your thoughts, and we'll discuss further in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.